Jesus freak here. Now I have two different retro computers here, and they serve different purposes and represent different time periods. This PS2 represents the kind of computers I tended to dig up when I was younger. When I was, around the late 90s. And in fact, I did have a PS2 at one time. I think it was a 25SX. Didn't last very long because the proprietary floppy drive that was almost on the way out, and the proprietary hard drive, both of which bit the dust pretty soon after I got it. And also later I did have one of the 8513 color monitors. This is mostly the kind of system, it's not really that heavily upgraded. Yeah, there's a 2 gig compact flash card in there. Everything else, it might be too new, but it's at least something reasonable you'd expect you might find in something that time period. There's Ethernet card, so I can get online with it. And, forgot that key's dead. Anyway, and there's a sound card. It's a Sound Blaster 16, but it's a 1997 model. And about the only way you can tell these speakers aren't from that time period are, first of all, light's blue, and second, the left-hand side one has the Amazon logo on it. And as you saw, that's a black and white monitor. I had an option to get a color monitor that goes with the system, but I went with this one instead. And this does go with the system. I knew someone around 94 who had a PS2 Model 30. This is 3286, and that was the exact monitor he had. This machine's much newer, being from 96, and reflects about what I would have done with a computer. The machine I had in around 2002, 2003. Everything's on board. I did some videos with this back when I got it. Everything's on board except for the sound card. And no, that monitor isn't part of the computer. I've actually owned that monitor since 96. Had some near-death experiences, that monitor did, but it still works. In fact, the machine that I bought this as kind of an ersatz of did actually use this exact monitor. Now, this is a roughly 25-year-old computer, but it's actually new enough that it can run some old emulators And I've shown, running some arcade games, running Nintendo. I could run Genesis, I'd play Sonic on here if I wanted to. And one might ask, what's the point of having multiple old computers? It's always been me, even when I was in high school, I had a couple computers that were old. Well, I had one that wasn't exactly old. It was more or less new when I got it in '96. But it wasn't, cutting edge or anything. It was 486. And later on, I got 286 and 386, which eventually I took and combined into a big old machine I called Fat Albert, because the case was so huge. But the 486 was interesting. With 48650 and 48666, you had CPUs that were fast enough. You could implement, you could play a lot of the games. We grew up playing in the 1980s and even into the early 90s. You could implement them completely in software. You could implement an NES completely in software. You could implement a Genesis completely in software. And it was fast enough you could actually do it. 50 megahertz 486 is about the slowest I'd suggest. There's few emulators that'll run on that. Nesticle, Genesis. Yeah, I know the names are kind of unfortunate. It's, the juvenile mindset out of people at that time. Nowadays, I'd use, FCEUX or Kega Fusion, which are much more powerful, but they're a lot slower and, they make much more demand off the CPU. I remember one time, this was about 1998, we had some kids over, and I let the kids use my Super Nintendo down in the basement. They were playing Super Mario All-Stars, and I was off in my room in the basement, my bedroom, and I was playing a regular Super Mario on Nesticle. So, we're both playing the same thing. It feels weird to think of something from 1996 as being retro. And I guess, it's hard to think of anything beyond a certain point as being, classic. I still, I hear 80s music, even early 90s. I hear Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Stone Temple Pilots on Giant with 91.7 CIXL, the classic rock station. But I can't see anything past 77 as being classic rock. I remember when oldies meant, 50s music, maybe early 60s. You hardly ever hear that on the radio anymore. I died a little inside. I was listening to an oldies station once, and they're playing Manic Monday by the Bangles. That came out in '86. It was written by Prince. I guess it's just, I'm getting older. I'm getting to the, get off my lawn stage. Happens to the best of us. Jesus, freak out.